October 9th, 1941, Pearl Harbor, Oahu. The humid air hums with the buzz of insects and the distant rumble of naval engines. Across the harbor, sailors polish brass fittings and oil the turrets of battleships moored in neat lines. The Arizona, Oklahoma, West Virginia. At the same hour, just a few miles away in downtown Honolulu, a man in a light suit and Panama hat steps into a narrow consulate building on Nu'uanu Avenue. His name? Takeo Yoshikawa, a naval intelligence officer working under diplomatic cover as a clerk. He carries no camera, no map, only memory. Each morning, he strolls the harbor, observing through the lens of his sunglasses. Which ships are anchored, which are gone, which return. He notes the number of planes on the airfields, the tempo of drills, the color of signal flags. His reports are detailed, meticulous, and sent daily through the Japanese consulate's code room to Tokyo. Inside, another man, Vice Consul Tadashi Morimura, an alias for Yoshikawa, helps prepare the transmissions. The operators use a complex cipher machine called Purple, believed by Tokyo to be unbreakable. The encoded dispatches leave the island as harmless telegrams bound for Japan. They believe the Americans are blind to it all. But in a locked basement thousands of miles away, in Washington, D.C., inside a small nondescript building known as OP-20G, the U.S. Navy's cryptanalytics section, two men are already reading their mail. Lieutenant Commander Joseph Rochefort leans over a cluttered desk, scanning the latest intercepts printed on thin yellow paper. Another message from Honolulu, he says quietly, passing it to a young analyst. The machine-translated text reads, "Request for grid of harbor, divided into 5 zones. Report ship positions accordingly." Rochefort removes his glasses, rubbing his temples. They're planning something, and they think we can't hear. Over the next weeks, his team continues to decipher purple-coded traffic through a device reverse-engineered by American cryptologists months earlier. Every Japanese message routed through diplomatic channels passes through this secret listening post, and every keystroke is logged, transcribed, and sent to naval intelligence. By November, the pattern becomes unmistakable. Reports from Hawaii, Manila, Singapore, all describing Allied fleet movements with growing precision. The Japanese believe they've built an invisible network of eyes. What they don't know is that every signal they send is now a whisper in the Americans' ear. At Station Hypo in Pearl Harbor itself, Rochefort's local team listens to faint transmissions on shortwave sets, recording them on wax cylinders, analyzing call signs and timing intervals. They don't yet know where the storm will break, only that Tokyo's radio traffic has grown restless. Back in Honolulu, Yoshikawa mails another coded dispatch describing a Sunday quiet across the U.S. Pacific Fleet. The day is calm. No one suspects that the spy in the Panama hat is being watched, or that his reports are already known before they even reach Tokyo. In the quiet hum of his typewriter, he believes he's winning a silent war of information. In truth, the Americans are letting him. November 15th, 1941, Washington, D.C. Navy Department, OP-20G. Rain lashes the windows of the cramped code room. The smell of coffee and ozone from humming equipment fills the air. Lieutenant Commander Joseph Rochefort stands over a row of cryptographers hunched at their desks, each surrounded by strips of punched paper, rotary dials, and cigarette smoke. The Purple analog machine, a crude but functional replica of Japan's top diplomatic cipher, ticks softly as decoded text scrolls out line by line. Message 907, a young analyst announces. Tokyo to Honolulu, high priority. Rochefort nods. Read it. The operator recites. Report on U.S. naval units in Pearl Harbor, Classify by location, east, west, and central sectors. Silence follows. Rochefort glances toward the wall clock. The Japanese Empire, still formally at peace, is dividing the harbor into bombing grids. Across the Pacific, in the American listening station at Fort Shafter, Hawaii, rows of operators monitor the faint electrical pulses of Japanese transmissions. They log call signs, frequencies, and intervals. The work is tedious, the meaning often unclear, but the pattern, shorter messages, higher encryption levels, and sudden silences, speaks louder than words. Meanwhile, in Tokyo, the Imperial Navy's First Air Fleet completes its final rehearsals. But even Admiral Yamamoto, orchestrating the plan for the Pearl Harbor strike, has no idea that his empire's most secret communications system has already been compromised. The Japanese believe purple to be mathematically impregnable, a cipher based on 25 switching rotors that change with every transmission. What they don't know is that American cryptanalysts, led by William Friedman and his team at the Army Signal Intelligence Service, had already reconstructed it from intercepted traffic months earlier, without ever having seen the original device. They called the decoding machine MAGIC. Every purple message passes through it like a reel of film in reverse, exposing words never meant to be seen. Each morning, a courier delivers magic decrypts to a locked room in the Navy Department, where officers from Naval Intelligence, the Army, and the White House read them in silence. Then, the papers are burned. By late November, the intercepts grow frantic. Tokyo instructs all diplomatic posts to destroy codebooks and sensitive files, in preparation for emergency measures. One message orders that relations with the United States will end abruptly if negotiations fail by December 1st. The Americans don't yet know the emergency means war. But they know something vast is moving. In Honolulu, Takeo Yoshikawa walks the edge of Ford Island again, observing as usual, counting destroyers, noting aircraft readiness, studying ship moorings. He writes his report that evening, confident it will reach Tokyo unmolested. But in a hidden cable room under the U.S. Navy Yard, that same report flickers across a receiving screen. An officer smiles faintly. "Our friend's out for another stroll," he says. Every keystroke Yoshikawa sends home now runs straight through American hands. They could arrest him. They could close the consulate. But higher command chooses not to. It's better to watch, to let the game play out. The Americans have learned something deeper than what Tokyo believes, that controlling the flow of information can be more powerful than intercepting it. They are feeding the illusion that Japan's eyes remain unseen, while quietly tightening the noose around the channels those eyes depend on. In Washington, Rochefort gathers his staff. "They're certain we're deaf," he says. "Let's keep it that way." He knows that every message they read without revealing the truth is another advantage banked for the future, a future that's approaching faster than anyone expects. December 2nd, 1941, Honolulu. The island sleeps under a thin veil of tropical rain. In the quiet back office of the Japanese consulate, Takeo Yoshikawa adjusts his tie and unlocks the cipher room door. The faint smell of machine oil and carbon paper hangs in the air. Two operators sit beside a humming purple machine, its gears and lamps flickering with each coded pulse. Yoshikawa places his handwritten report on the desk, a full assessment of American ship locations, including which vessels are moored singly and which are berthed in pairs. He does not know that only hours earlier that same message, still encrypted, had already been copied by American intercept stations. Inside Station Hypo, beneath a converted naval building at Pearl Harbor, Commander Joseph Rochefort's men monitor shortwave bursts through headphones, translating them into Morse patterns on long ticker tapes. Chief Radioman Tommy Dyer jots down the sequence, whispering, eyes narrowing. Same origin. Tokyo link, he mutters. Traffic doubled since midnight. Rochefort, wearing a rumpled khaki shirt and a perpetual frown, leans over the receiver. Mark it. Forward to Washington. And keep listening. Across the Pacific, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto's message reaches the strike fleet already moving through the North Pacific under radio silence. The operation is irreversible. The Kido Butai, 6 carriers, 350 planes, has vanished into the northern fog. Even they believe their spy in Honolulu is guiding them unseen. But in Washington, the reality is inverted. At Army Signal Intelligence Headquarters, the magic decryption room hums as analysts feed the purple intercepts through their mechanical twin. Lines of decoded Japanese text print onto thin paper marked Top Secret, Ultra Sensitive. The newest dispatch stands out. Divide Pearl Harbor into grids A through E. Report vessel types and berthing locations. Colonel Rufus Bratton reads the translation twice, frowning. They're mapping for an attack, he says. But the U.S. intelligence web is tangled. Army, Navy, and diplomatic channels overlap, guarded by layers of secrecy. Reports move slowly. Analysts warn, but not all believe. Japan might strike somewhere, one officer remarks, but not here. Not across 4,000 miles of ocean. Still others sense the shift. The Japanese embassy in Washington has begun burning papers in its furnace at midnight. Telegraph operators note hurried transmissions. At Pearl Harbor, radio silence feels too quiet. Rochefort's men hear nothing from Tokyo that night, and that absence itself is alarming. December 6, 1941. President Franklin D. Roosevelt receives a long decrypted message from Tokyo, part of a 14-part series sent through the broken purple code. It ends with a chilling line. Relations between Japan and the United States are to be severed. The final section arrives too late to stop what's already in motion. But the cryptologists, the listeners, the men behind the static, they've already learned the truth that will define the coming years of war. Information, once captured, is a weapon sharper than any blade or bullet. In Honolulu, Yoshikawa closes the consulate window and looks toward the harbor, unaware that every coded message he has ever sent now sits, decrypted and cataloged, in an American file stamped Magic Confidential. He smiles faintly, believing his mission is a success. He has no idea that the Americans have been listening all along, and that soon his infiltration will become the bait in a counterintelligence trap designed to expose Japan's entire network. As the sun sets over the Pacific, radio silence deepens. The storm is only hours away. December 7th, 1941, 7:48 a.m., Pearl Harbor. The first bombs fall through a sky of perfect blue. A column of smoke rises from Battleship Row as sailors scramble across the decks of the Arizona and West Virginia. The harbor erupts in chaos, sirens wailing, machine guns hammering, oil fires painting the water black. On a hill overlooking Honolulu, Takeo Yoshikawa hears the distant thunder. He steps out of the consulate balcony, stunned. From this height, he can see plumes of smoke curling upward, a panorama of destruction he never thought he'd witness. His hands tremble as he realizes the attack came without his final report being sent. He'd been instructed to stay silent that morning. Tokyo hadn't needed him. In Washington, Commander Rochefort stands in his office, the phone ringing non-stop. The air smells of cigarette smoke and burned circuits from overworked decoding machines. He's just learned that the Pacific Fleet has been hit. Yet amid the chaos, something feels wrong. He turns to his deputy. "They never read our intercepts in time," he says. We heard every message, but we never understood the silence. Hours later, as the shock settles, American intelligence analysts comb through the logs. Every message from Tokyo to Honolulu is re-examined. A chilling pattern emerges. They'd been watching Yoshikawa's coded reports for weeks, but not all of them had been shared quickly enough with commanders in Hawaii. Intelligence had the signals, but not the interpretation. But something else stands out. In the days leading up to the attack, several of Yoshikawa's messages had been subtly altered by Tokyo. Changed phrases, truncated coordinates, missing cipher blocks. The Americans had decoded those inconsistencies but dismissed them as noise. They weren't. Rochefort studies one particular cable. Refrain from further reports. Prepare for standstill. It was sent 2 days before the attack, a rare silence order. To a trained intelligence officer, it now reads like an admission. Yoshikawa's usefulness was over. His role as observer had ended. The operation had moved beyond him. And yet, in a twist that only war could produce, the Americans had been reading Japan's encrypted diplomatic traffic the entire time. They'd seen their enemy's plans unfold through static and code, but lacked the one element that turns intelligence into action: clarity. By 1942, that would change. In the months following the attack, Station HYPO becomes the nerve center of Allied code-breaking. Rochefort's team perfects the art of signals counter-espionage, not just intercepting enemy communications, but manipulating them. The same principles that let them read Japan's messages before Pearl Harbor will later help them deceive the Imperial Navy at Midway, feeding Tokyo false information and luring their carriers into a trap. The lesson of Pearl Harbor isn't just the shock of surprise. It's the revelation that intelligence isn't about knowing. It's about timing, interpretation, and the courage to act on fragments before they form a whole. Years later, declassified reports reveal that Yoshikawa had always believed his mission had crippled America's ability to respond. He never knew that his carefully coded reports, every ship count, every harbor sketch, every observation, had been read by his enemies before they even reached Tokyo. He died in obscurity after the war, convinced he had outsmarted the United States. But in truth, he was one of the first pieces in a much larger game, a pawn whose every move had been watched from the beginning. As the waves lap quietly against the rusted hull of the Arizona, the world remembers December 7th as the Day of Infamy. Yet for those in the shadow rooms of intelligence, it marks something else. The day modern counter-espionage was born, not from victory, but from understanding the enemy's silence.